Billinge Hill Wireless Station was opened in 1942 and it was initially and officially used as a transmitting and receiving station to supplement the privately owned police communications scheme, and in 1951 it was converted into an installation and maintenance depot for VHF schemes. Billinge Hill has been surrounded by rumour and conspiracy over the last 80 years. The first came about in the early 1940s when it was rumoured that two policemen were stationed there permanently to listen for illicit, clandestine radio transmissions from Ireland, where enemy agents were operating from 1938 to 1944. They were also believed to be covering the Manchester area for ground wave signals as well. They were to report to the Home Office and the Radio Security Service, and their work was special intercept duties and not part of the military Y service. So not a Y station as such, but clearly the small wooden hut on Billinge Hill had a part to play in counter-espionage. Y stations were British signals intelligence collection sites established during the First World War and used again in the Second World War. The sites were operated by a range of agencies including the British military and MI6 and MI5 and GPO and Marconi receiving stations both ashore and afloat. There were more than 600 receiving sets in use at Y stations during the Second World War. Many amateur radio operators supported the work of the Y stations, being enrolled as what was known as voluntary interceptors. In 1984, the Home Office opened the doors of the Village Wireless Depot at the top of Billinge Hill in an attempt to dispel worrying rumours made by CND members. The Evening Post and Chronicle were invited in for a close look around in an attempt to stop the rumours from circulating. The Home Office were growing increasingly worried by a number of people who were convinced the small depot had sinister connections with civil defence. It was believed that the whispers began several years before when a publication of a booklet called Target Northwest pinpointed Billinge Hill Wireless Station. The real job of the site at the time was the development and design, procurement, installation and maintenance of police and fire brigade communication systems, as well as providing consultancy services for both home and overseas police forces and fire brigades in both radio and line communications. Billinge was at the time one of 12 regional depots and had 5 detachments located in Greater Manchester, Merseyside and Cheshire, where they were on hand to answer emergency and repair calls. However, CND claimed that the station was in direct contact with Menwith Hill, a US listening post based in the UK, and was also the disguise for a nuclear bunker buried beneath the depot. This was strongly denied by bosses at the station. Part of the reason for these rumours was the presence of a waterboard underground reservoir with vent pipes which looked like a bunker. Billinge was also used by the Royal Observer Corps, and there was a bunker at the site 60 yards west of and below the beacon. The beacon itself was used for aircraft observation during and after the war. The bunker would have been used to monitor the location of nuclear blasts and the resulting fallout over Lancashire in the event of nuclear war. The post opened in January of 1960 and closed in October 1968, and both the reservoir and the old civil defence bunker were completely unrelated to the radio station. Another reason for suspicion was the fleet of 27 unmarked canary yellow vans that were based there. However, at one time they did have Home Office written on the side, but when the IRA stepped up the campaign, the decision was made by the government to leave the vans unmarked. A spokesman for the site in the early 80s said that a lot of people's fears were based on ignorance, but it is ignorance that can cause problems. We do sometimes find it quite amusing to hear what is supposed to go on here, but we also find it worrying. We have no nuclear connections whatsoever and are just as vulnerable as anybody else. During the CB radio boom of the early 1980s, Billinge Hill became affectionately known in CB radio slang as Moonbase Alpha, a hangover from the rumour surrounding the site. The site and depot eventually transferred to NTL with the privatisation of the Directorate of Communications and is today a nondescript generic radio transmitter and receiver site for commercial radio and other communications, and is owned by Arqiva.